Hello everyone, this is Sarvesh, lecturer in Civil Engineering, Government Polytechnic, Station Kanpur. And this lecture is a continuation to the previous lecture that is on design of continuous slabs and beams by limit state method using IS 456 2000. After completion of this lecture, you are able to know how to design a continuous beams or slabs by limit state method using IS 456 2000, because for a design of continuous beams, IS 456 2000 proposed a simplified method for determination of the dimensions of the continuous beams. So after completion of this lecture, you are able to know how to design a continuous beams or slabs. And again, this method have some limitations. So after completion of this lecture, you are able to know what are those limitations and where it is applicable, right? So these things you will be able to know after completion of this lecture. And before going to start today's lecture, I would like to rewind what we were discussed till last class. So in last class, we were discussed about the uh, calculation of bending moment and shear forces in continuous beams or slabs. That means, as per the codal provisions, we have determined the um, maximum bending moment and shear forces at a given section, right? And we were solved two different type of problems. That means, based upon the given data. In first problem, we were discussed about the calculation of maximum shear force and bending moment. Similarly, the second case, that is a special case, that means the load is acted on each span is different, right? That means, on end spans, the load intensity of load is different, and the interior spans, the intensity of load is different. So in this case, how to determine the maximum bending moment and how to calculate it from the Codal provisions we were discussing last class, right? And we have solved one simplified example for better understanding, right? So today I'm going to discuss about the how to design the continuous beam, because till last class we were calculated the shear forces and bending moments based upon the given data. That means the uh, size of the beam, everything has been fixed. For that, that means size, the beam is already fixed and reinforcement is also fixed. For that data, what is the shear force of bending moment? What is the resistance of the beam? That is what we were discussed. Now, what in this class we will learn how to design a beam, continuous beam, right? So some steps are similar to the earlier one, but I'm going to discuss a very detailed each and every point how to design a continuous beam. So first point in design, obviously, you need to assume some dimensions of the member, right? How to assume? We can assume the dimensions of the member based upon the stiffness of the member, right? That means L effective by D ratios. So this is a continuous beam. The L effective by D ratio is varies from L effective by D ratio for continuous beams is 26. Uh, so you can assume based upon you can assume any value, and you can determine the depth of the beam and width of the beam. For general purpose, we will assume the overall depth of the beam in between L by 10 to L by 50, because here it is a continuous beam. The depth required will become very less as compared to our simply supported singly reinforced or doubly reinforced. So that is why you can assume depth in between, that is L by 10 to L by 50. Then after determining the effective depth, then you can or overall depth, whatever you want, you can. There is only assumption, right? So based upon your experience, you can assume whether it is the overall depth or effective depth, right? So if you determine the effective depth, if you assume effective depth is equal to some L by 15 to L by 10 to L by 15, then you can add the effective cover, assume effective cover, and submit it and find out the overall depth of the beam, right? Suppose if you calculated, either way you can calculate it. It doesn't. It is not required to take a. There is no any restriction that you need to assume only the effective depth. Then you have to find out the overall depth. No, it's not that. Okay, anything you can assume it. Either you can assume overall depth, or you can assume directly effective depth and find out the overall depth. Right? If you determine the overall depth, then assume the effective cover and determine the effective depth. That means D minus effective cover or cover minus diameter of the box. Right. The other way is you can directly assume the effective depth here and assume effective cover, and you can add it for getting the overall depth. Right. So like this, you can determine the overall depth of the beam and effective depth of the beam. Then if width of the beam is given, that's fine. Otherwise, you can assume the width of the beam. Generally, the width of the beam varies from one third to half of the depth of the beam. Or generally, we provide width of the beam equal to width of the support equal to width of the beam. Right? Either way, you can assume it based upon your experience. Right? So now here dimensions are finalized. That means we assumed some dimensions of the member. Then for that dimensions, what are the what is the effective span that you need to determine. The effective span should be calculated. So here it is a continuous beam, right? The effective span should be calculated as per class 22.2 of IS 456-2000. So as per IS 456-2000, the effective span is depend upon effective span in continuous beam depends on the width of the support, right? If the width of the support is less than the 1/12 of the clear span, if the width of the support is less than the 1/12 of the clear span, then the effective span is the least of the following. It's just like similar to your simply supported beam. That means center to center distance between the supports, or clear span plus effective depth, whichever is lesser. That should be considered as your effective span, right? So that means just I would like to write diagram. So this is a example I am just drawing it. So this is the width of the support. If the width of the support is less than the 1/12 of the clear span, then you have to calculate the effective span based upon these two. That means consider least of these two, right? So suppose if the width of the span is greater than 1/12 of the clear span or 600 mm, whichever is lesser. If the support width is wider than the 1/12 of the clear span or 600 mm, whichever is less, then again the effective span should be calculated in two ways. There are two types. One is if the end span, for end spans, one end is fixed and other end is continuous. Okay, one end is fixed and other end is continuous. Or for all intermediate spans, the effective span is equal to clear span between the supports. Right? Is it clear? That means if the width of the span is less than the 1/12 of the clear span, then you can calculate based upon this case. It is simply similar to your simply supported. If the width of the span is width of the support is greater than 1/12 of the clear span or 600 mm, whichever is lesser, then in that case, two cases will rise. That means for end spans or other intermediate spans, one end is fixed and other end is continuous. Then the effective span will become as clear span between supports. Right? If another case is if one end is free and other end is continuous, right? If one end is free and other end is continuous, therefore the effective span should be calculated the least of these. That means clear span plus half of the effective depth or clear span plus half of the width of the discontinued supports. Right? First case is the effective span equal to clear span plus half of the effective width, effective depth, sorry, and or clear span plus half of the width of the discontinuous support, and whichever is lesser, that should be considered as your effective span. Right? So these three cases you should remember. So to determine the effective span or effective length of a continuous. Right? So after determining the dimensions and effective span, then you need to determine the loads. That means dead loads and imposed loads. Again, uh, so in dead loads and imposed loads, there are another two types. That means the fixed loads and not fixed loads. Right? You need to separate it separately, calculate it here. Right? So dead loads and imposed loads fixed, imposed loads not fixed. Separately, you need to determine the loads and you need to determine the factored loads by application of partial safety factor for loads as per IS 456-2000. Right? So now you have calculated the dimensions of the beam and you have calculated the effective length of the span, effective length of the beam or effective span of the beam. Next, you have calculated the factored loads. Right? So next step is you need to determine the calculate the critical moments at various positions using the bending moment coefficients for table 12 as per IS 456-2000 or from exact analysis like moment distribution method or Connies method or if any other methods you want to do. Right? So that means you need to determine the, so now you have the loads. Let us say for example, so this is a beam, continuous beam, right? And these are the supports, right? And you are already determined the what are the different types of loads on each span, right? So if you want to determine the moments, right? That means at various positions, then you can use the IS 456 method, that is table number 12, or you can use any exact method because whatever the method proposed by IS 456-2000 is an approximate method, not exact but approximate method, right? So from this you can easily find out the shear forces and bending moments. It means IS 456 they proposed here coefficients to determine the bending moment. That means span moments as well as support moments. Span moments is nothing but near at the middle of the member. End moments means at the supports, right? Either you can use these coefficients and determine the bending moments, or you can use any method, that is moment distribution method or Cornish method. That means, see, this is uh, when it is constructed continuously and monolithic. When you apply the load at one point, there is some effect on other span, right? Some resistance, suppose if you apply the load here, some resistance will take this beam and some resistance will take this one. That means it is a sharing distribution, right? So by using moment distribution method or Cornish method, you can determine the exact shear forces and bending moments, right? So now if you are able to calculate the exact shear forces and bending moment, then design is easy, right? But it takes time. It is not as simple as we calculated for simply supported and cantilever. It takes a lot of iterations for distribution, redistribution, right? So that is why. So in this class, we are using the IS 456 method to determine the shear forces and bending moments, right? So, but there are some limitations for this method. Okay, first we'll discuss the how to determine the coefficients, then we'll go for limitations. Right? Now, as per IS 456 2000, table number 12, we just determine the moment coefficient. So this is the table for this is the IS 456 table for determining the bending moment coefficient. So here, as I told now, the bending moments are two types, that is span moments and support moments, right? So span moments again, it is two types. That means near middle of end span at middle of interior span. That means suppose this is your beam, let us say, and this is your beam, let us say having three spans. So near the middle of end span, which one? This one and this one are the end spans. Near the middle of end span. So these coefficients are used to determine the bending moment at this place. That is the near middle of end span. At middle of interior span. So this one is the interior span. So that means if you use these coefficients, you will get the bending moment at this bend, right? Next, coming to the support moments. So again, it is two types. That is edge support next to the end support. So this is the support next to the end support. That means here. If you use these coefficients, you will get the bending moment at this, right. And next one is at other interior supports. Suppose this will also become as next to end support. Suppose if you have another span, and this will become as a next to end support, and this will become as your interior support, right? So if you use these equations, you will get the bending moment at interior, right? So like this, you need to use these coefficients and multiply these coefficients with uh, W into L square, right? And you just observe it. Span moments are positive here from the table, and support moments are negative. What is indicates? It indicates that actually, if you see the bending moment diagram or deflection shape of a continuous beam, let us draw a shape of the bending moment or deflection shape. So it will start. Right. So here the bending moment is 0, then it will deflect like this. Yeah. So this is the shape of the bending or bending moment diagram, right? So at this place, these are the span moments, right? All these are sagging bending. That means positive bending moment. That is why it is given plus. Plus indicates sagging bending moment, right? And support moments here, it is a negative bending. That means hogging bending. So that is why it is negative, right? So sagging bending moment occurs at the middle of the span. Hogging bending moment occurs at the support, right? So therefore, you can calculate the bending moment, sagging bending moment, and hogging bending moment separate for all the cases. You need to calculate for all the cases, right? So after calculating the bending moments, then what you have to do is you just determine the maximum one, right? So from the bending moment, you have to calculate all the bending moments. See? From all the cases, you need to calculate the bending moment near the middle of end span and at middle of interior span, as well as the bending moment at support next to the end support and at other interior support. So after that, you just identify where you got the maximum bending, right? Then after getting all bending moments, identify the maximum bending moment. Now you need to check the depth required. Right? That means whatever the dimensions we provided, you need to check whether these dimensions are adequate to resist the bending moments which are developed within the beam or not, right? So for that, you need to equate your bending moment, maximum bending moment equal to mu max. The mu max is nothing but what? The mu max is the maximum bending moment corresponding to balance structure. That means xu is equal to xu max. So therefore, xu should be determined as per IS 456 2000 based on the grade of steel. So it is a table which is given in IS 456 2000 to determine the xu max. Xu max is the limiting depth of neutral axis. So for Fe250 grade, Xu max is equal to 0.53D, and for Fe415 it is 0.48D, and for Fe500 it is 0.46D, right? So by using these values, the bending moment mu max is equal to uh, for different grade of steel. For Fe250 steel, the mu max is equal to 0.148 into FCK into BD square. How this value you got is actually the bending moment equation is 0.36 FCK into B into uh, what is that? B into XU into D minus 0.42 XU max. Just I would like to write the equation, actual equation. Mu max equal to 0.36 FCK D XU max into D minus 0.42 XU max, right? If you substitute this XU max in this equation, and you will get this equation for 250, you need to substitute XU max is 0.53, then you will get this is the simplified equation for determining the limiting moment of resistance, that is 0.148 FCK into B. And similarly, if you take 415, then it is 0.138 FCK P square. And if you take the grade of steel is 500, then it will become as 0.133 FCK K into BD square, right? And substitute your FCK D, and D is unknown. Remember, you need to determine the D required to resist that much of bending, whatever the bending moment we have calculated, right? So like this, you can calculate the bending moment equation. So this is the simplified bending moment equation for M20 and Fe415, that is 0.13 I, and this should be equal to your mu max, whatever you are calculated, maximum bending moment, right? To determine the effective depth required, then this is equal to maximum bending. How you calculated this? From previous table. From this table, you can calculate the bending moments for all the cases, that means span moments and support moments, out of which identify the maximum bending moment, and that maximum bending moment is equal to the mu max, mu limit, right? So here everything is known except D. So don't use whatever the effective depth we were calculated or assumed in first step, right? So here you need to determine the depth required to resist this maximum bending, right? So after determining the effective depth required, then you need to check whether your provided depth is more than the required or less than the required, right? So your provided depth, that means D provided, whatever you are provided, should be greater than D required, right? So that means whatever the effective depth you are provided, that should be greater than the D required. Therefore, your beam is safe, right? Suppose if this condition is okay, that means D provided is greater than D required, then you can go for further steps. Suppose for another case, if D required, now after checking this one, if it is satisfied, then you can proceed further calculation, right? If it is not satisfied, that means D provided, sorry, I can write it here. D provided is less than D required. So if this is the case, then you need to redesign your section by increasing the depth of the beam, right? Because whatever the effective depth you are provided or dimensions you are provided, they are not enough to take the this much of bending, right? Again, you have to go to the first step, change the dimensions and calculate the effective span and loads, and again calculate the bending moments, and again you come to here and check whether D required is greater than D provided or not. So D provided is greater than D required or not. So this is the iteration process. You need to continue, repeat the process till D provided should be greater than D required, greater than or equal, right? So after satisfying this one, then you can go for next step, that is determination of reinforcement. You need to determine the reinforcement required, right? So how to determine this reinforcement? By equating the moment of resistance corresponding to steel. That means the bending moment is simply whatever is same as whatever we discussed. Mu is equal to 0.87 f of y into y of st into d minus 0.42 xu. That means tension force into, this is the tension force into lever arm, right? D minus 0.42 x. And remember, you should not use XUmax here. That is only for the checking purpose. Whatever we considered in earlier step for determining the D required. So there we have used XUmax. So here it is XU. That means actual depth of neutral axis we need to use for determining the area of steel required. Right? How to determine this? As usual, you can you can find out by equating the compressive force equal to tension force. Right? So what is the compression force? Compression force is nothing but 0.36. This is 0.36 FCK into B into XU, and that's equal to this is 0.36 FCK B into XU is equal to this one 0.87 FO5 into AST. So from this equation, you can determine the XC value, and that XU becomes what? XU is equal to so this is XU, right? So 0.87 F of y into A of ST by 0.36 FCK into B, right? This is the equation to determine the actual depth of neutral axis. And here A of ST is also unknown. So substitute this XU value equation into here and simplify it, you will get this equation, right? So this is the basic concept, and from this if you substitute and simplify, you will get the simplified equation to determine the bending moment is equal to 0.87 F of y into A of ST into D into 1 minus F of y into A of ST by FCK into B, right? So you just equate your maximum bending moment is equal to this equation and determine the area of steel required, right? And find out the area of steel required at a given section, right? And after determining the area of steel, so one thing you should remember here, you need to determine for optimization. There are two methods for adopting the area of steel because it is a continuous beam, right? So this is a continuous beam. So let us say there are different support. So you have to calculate the one method is you just calculate the area of steel required for all the bending moment. That means span moments corresponding to span moments and corresponding to support moments, right? And based upon that, you can provide the area of steel at each section. That is one method. Another method is you can directly calculate the area of steel required corresponding to maximum, and that steel should be can be provided throughout the length of the beam for all sections. But this will give the conservative, but time will reduce, right? And if you have calculated the bending moment at every section and calculate the reinforcement for each section, so it is a time taking but economical, right? Either way you can go, but generally we will follow economical way. That means for each bending moment, calculate the area of steel required, right? So after determining the area of steel required, then you need to check whether your area of steel is as per the permissible limits or not. What are the permissible limits? Maximum AST and minimum AST as per the IS 450. What is the maximum AST? That means the maximum reinforcement, the maximum tension reinforcement in a beam should not be greater than 0.04 BD, right? Should not be greater than the 4% of BD or 0.04 BD, not be greater than 0.04 BD. And minimum E should be calculated from this, that is A of S by BD equal to 0.85 F of phi. Okay, your area required should be greater than the your area AST required should be greater than the AST minimum and should be less than the AST maximum. So this condition must be satisfied. Suppose if it is satisfied, then you can assume the diameter of the bar and determine the number of bars required, right? And you can provide it. Suppose if it is your required AST is less than the AST minimum, then you can provide the AST minimum directly and assume the diameter and find out the number of bars, right? Suppose if A of ST required is greater than the A of ST maximum, then you need to redesign your section by changing the diameter. That means you have to put the first step and you have to do all the steps till here, right? So this is the iteration process, right? You cannot provide the more steel, right? So after completion of calculation of reinforcement, then you have to design for shear. So before going to shear, you just check as per whether it is deflection check. That means vertical deflection limits may generally assumed to be satisfied provided that the span to effective depth ratios are not greater than the values given as per IS 456 2000. So for continuous beams, the L effective by D ratio should not be permissible limit is 26 into modification factor, and this modification factor is depends upon the area of steel provided in tension zone and F of S value. And from these values you can determine the modification factors from figure 4. Yeah, from this figure you can find out the modification factor and multiply this modification factor with allowable value for continuous beams. It is 26 L effective by D ratio 26 into this modification factor, right? So this is the percentage of tension steel and this is the F of S value. Based upon these two values you can find out the modification factor and you will get the allowable stiffness value, that means L effective by D ratio, and check whether your actual L effective by D ratio of the beam as per your dimensions and your as per your L effective by D ratio should be less than the allowable value. Therefore, it is safe in stiffness. Otherwise, it is failed due to stiffness. Then you need to redesign your section by assuming the another dimension, right? That means you need to go to first step again, assume the dimensions, different dimensions, and do the process. So like this, you need to design the beams. Then after checking is over for stiffness, then you can go for shear force calculation. That means you need to check for shear. You need to design your beam for shear, right? If it is a slab, you need to check for shear. If it is a beams, you need to design the shear reinforcement, right? So for this, you need to calculate the shear forces. So for calculation of shear forces, you can use the table number 13 of IS 456 2000. From this table, you can calculate the shear force coefficients to determine the shear force at different places. That means at end support, at support next to the end support, and here there are two types, that is the outer side and inner side, and all other interior supports, and calculate the shear force for all these cases, right? And determine the maximum shear force, where you will get the maximum shear force, and corresponding to maximum shear force, that will become as your BU. Corresponding to maximum shear force, calculate the nominal shear stress. That means tau B is equal to VU by VD, where VU is your maximum shear force, right? So here also same thing. There are different methods. One is you can take the maximum and calculate the shear force, shear reinforcement based upon maximum PU and apply it throughout the beam. That is one method, but conservative. Another method is you can calculate the uh, shear reinforcement for each section. That means wherever you got the shear force, take that section and find out the shear reinforcement for that section. Right? That is economical but time taking. Right? So here, as far as your examination concerns, so you can follow this one, take it maximum and do it. But practical cases, you have to consider each section separately and find out it the design the shear reinforcement. So here take the VU by BD for calculation of nominal shear stress, where VU is the ultimate factor shear, right? And then you need to determine the tau c, that means the shear stress of concrete should be calculated, and the shear stress of concrete is based upon the percentage of tension reinforcement and grade of concrete, right? So calculate the percentage of tension reinforcement provided, that means percentage of reinforcement, tension reinforcement, A of T equal to A of ST into BD into 100. Then go to table number 19 and corresponding to your, this is the table number 19 to determine the tau c, that is shear stress of concrete, right? So this can be calculated by, so this is a percentage of steel, tension steel, and this is the grade of concrete. There is 20, 25, 30 and above 40. If your percentage of steel is in between the values, then you need to interpolate. By interpolation, you need to determine the corresponding your tension reinforcement value tau c, right? So after determining the tau c, then you need to determine the tau c max, that is maximum shear force, shear stress, right? So tau c can be calculated from IS 456 to 1000. So from that, after calculation the tau b, tau c, and tau c max, then you need to compare. That is, if tau b, the nominal shear stress is less than the tau c, the shear strength of concrete, and tau b is less than the tau c max, that means actually no shear reinforcement is required, because whatever the concrete and steel you are providing, that is more enough to take the shear stress. But as per IS 456 2000 class 26.5.1.6, you need to provide minimum shear reinforcement, right? So if this is the condition, that means tau b is less than tau c and tau b is less than tau c max, then determine the provide the minimum shear reinforcement. And that can be calculated by using this equation, that is A of SV by B of SV, and should be greater than or equal to zero point 0.4 by 0.87 f of 5, where A of SV is nothing but you can assume whether you want to provide the vertical stirrups or inclined stirrups, right? And whether it is a one leg, two leg, or multi leg. Based upon that, you can calculate the A of SV value. Then, sorry. From this, everything is known. You just calculate the SV, right? That is the spacing between the stirrups. Then again, there are some limitations for calculation of spacing. That means for vertical stirrups, it should not be greater than 0.75 D or 300 mm, whichever is lesser. So compare all these three, provide minimum, right? This is the way you need to calculate the shear reinforcement. Suppose the another case is if tau b is greater than tau c. If tau b is greater than tau c and tau b is less than tau c max, that means you need to design the shear reinforcement, right? How to design? You just calculate the BUS. BUS is the shear force, uh, the shear force. For that shear force, you need to design the shear reinforcement. That means you need to calculate the shear force taken by the concrete itself. That means based upon tau c, you need to calculate the shear force taken by the concrete. That means tau c into BD. So this is the shear force taken by the concrete itself, and this is the what is the actual ultimate shear force. So you just subtract this one, you will get the net shear force. So this much of shear force you need, for this much of shear force you need to design the shear reinforcement, right? So that is called VUS. VUS equal to U minus tau C into V. And take this VUS and determine the spacing required to resist this much of VUS. So same assume that are whether it is a vertical stirrups or inclined stirrups, or it is a combination of any one, and assume the diameter and whether it is a one-legged, two-legged or multi-legged. Based upon that, calculate the A of SV and find out the spacing required. So after calculating spacing required, then again same thing. That means there are some provisions for calculation of spacing. That is for a maximum spacing of stirrups should not be greater than the following. That is for vertical stirrups, there is 0.75D, right, and 300 mm, whichever is lesser, right. The maximum spacing should not exceed 0.75D and 300. So now you have three spacing. One is from here, another is these two here. So out of which you can provide the minimum to satisfy all the conditions. And if it is a inclined stirrups of 45 degrees, then the maximum spacing should not be greater than the effective depth of section or 300 mm, whichever is lesser. So this is how you need to calculate the shear design, shear reinforcement design of a beam. Then another condition is, that is if the sorry, here it is not came, but another condition is if tau b is uh, so another case is that means if the tau b is greater than tau c max. So if this is the case, then you need to redesign the section because our tau b is more than the maximum shear resistance of the concrete, right? So if this is the case, you need to redesign your section, right? So like this, you have to design your continuous. Sorry, sorry. So tau c max can be calculated based upon this table, based on the grade of concrete, right? So after that, after shear design is over, then you need to check whether your uh, section is safe in bond or development length as per class number 26.2.3.3 of IS 456 2000. That means LD provided should be greater than LD required, right? So LD required should be calculated from this equation, that is 0.87 f of 5 into 5 by 4 tau b, where tau b is the bond strength. That should be calculated from the IS 456, right? So this is how you need to design your continuous gate, right? And this I would like to before that, yeah. So before closing, just I would like to raise one point, that is this: the IS 456 method proposed by continuous beams or slabs is used only for so some limitations are there. This is already we were discussing last class also. The three limitations is the beam should have minimum three spans. One is another second one is the beam should consist of only UDLs, and another one is the difference between any two spans should not be greater than 15% of the longest span. So if these three, you should remember, if these three are satisfied, then you can apply the IS code method to determine the shear forces and bending moment coefficients to determine the bending moment and shear force, right? So for this, I would like to conclude this class. So just summarize what we were discussed quickly. So we were discussed about the design procedure of continuous beams as per IS 456 method, and how to determine the bending moment and shear force. That means we need to achieve the diameter dimensions of the beam, then calculate the effective span. Then based upon that, calculate the loads, and based upon the loads, you just calculate the span moments and support moment, and then check your dimension. That means whether your provided dimensions effective depth is safe or not. If the provided is greater than the required, then it is safe. If it is not, then you need to redesign your section, right? So after satisfying, you need to calculate the area of steel as per your bending moments, and this area of steel should be checked with maximum and minimum, right? So if it is satisfied, then calculate the number of hours. Then you can go for check for deflection as per IS 456 2000. Then you need to design the shear reinforcement. That means you need to calculate the nominal shear force, nominal shear stress, tau c and tau c max. And if the tau c is less than tau c max, tau v is less than the tau c, then you need to provide the minimum shear reinforcement. If tau v is greater than tau c and tau v is less than tau c max, design the shear reinforcement. And if its tau v is greater than tau c max, you need to redesign. So after satisfying all these things, then you have to check for development, right? So for this, I would like to conclude this class. So next class we'll solve some simplified examples for better understanding. Thank you.